Indie games. The reason why I want to go into the video game career route and why I believe they're so important. Hey, it's your girl SammyCzewski, and I'm going to be talking about how impactful, important, and memorable indie games can be. Now, if you aren't entirely sure what an indie game is or what qualifies as an indie game, let me give a quick explanation. An independent video game or an indie game is a video game created by an individual or a small development team. Video games are usually made by big companies and well-known publishers that get a lot of support financially, technically, etc., whereas indie games that are created by small development teams or even an individual person do not get that same financial and technical support like large video game publishers do. I feel indie games have impacted my life the most personally, although of course there has been big name video games made by big name companies that have impacted me a lot. For example, Valve and Portal. If you can't tell, I'm wearing a Portal shirt and I have a Portal 2 tattoo. It's Peabody, but it can also be a turret. My personal feeling though is indie games have just been a lot more memorable and impactful to me. Personally, it's of course different to everyone, but I do want to talk about the importance of indie games as a whole anyway. These games are just so important to the industry because of the feeling it gives, because of how close the developers can be with their audience, and because of how personal the developers can really get with the game that they're creating. Due to the small amount of people working on the game concept can come out a lot more personal to each individual person working on that project, whereas that just won't be present when it comes to a big name video game. And that personal level is so incredibly nice to feel and just great to see put into a video game. And I'm not saying that that personal level cannot be seen or put into a big name video game. I just feel like it is so much more likely to happen with indie games due to these certain circumstances. Some indie games I do want to talk about more closely in this video though are Castle Crashers and Fran Bow. Now, it shouldn't be an extreme surprise that I'm talking about these games specifically for this video. I mean, I use the Castle Crashers soundtrack a lot in my videos. One of the songs from the Castle Crashers soundtrack is my outro song. And with Fran Bow, if you just scroll down my Instagram page a bit, you can see me cosplaying as Fran. I mean, it's well known that I really like these games, as well as I do plan, hopefully soon in the future, to get tattoos of these. I plan on getting a Castle Crashers tattoo right here, and I also plan on getting my cats tattooed on me, but in the art style for Fran Bow, so then I get, you know, the best of both worlds. Castle Crashers is an indie game that was created by the Behemoth and released in 2008. That company only contained of 6 people when they first formed together in 2003, and then later on in 2004 came out with their first game, Alien Hominid. Then soon followed Castle Crashers, then a bit later came Battle Block Theater, and then after that there was Pit People. That's what it was. So they had Alien Hominid in 2004, Castle Crashers in 2008, Battle Block Theater in 2013, I believe, and then Pit People in 2017. Although not all of the original members are still working with that company anymore, they were just a small amount of people who came from Newgrounds and decided to start making games together. Castle Crashers was their second game to come out, and has been my favorite game since the first time I've discovered it. Not only has it given me such amazing memories with my brother and friends, but it also helped me realize that games don't have to look like Gears of War and Halo to be extremely enjoyable. The game follows 4 different knights trying to save 4 different princesses, as well as saving this giant crystal back for the king. Though these knights aren't like other knights because they are colored. The other knights, the normal, original, background NPC knights, are just gray, while these knights are orange, green, red, and blue. Now, the orange knight has fire, green knight has poison, red knight has lightning, and the blue knight has ice. Those are their powers. I mentioned that because my main character that I always played in that game was the Orange Knight, and because of that, orange has now become one of my favorite colors. I mean, you can't really tell because pink has like extremely dominated the favorite color aspect of my life, but orange is one of my favorite colors. Now, the game has been much more impactful than just the colors or the memories, but because of the game itself. It's such a cute and simple 2D game that has hours of replayability and can never bore you after just binge playing. Such a small developing group created such a simplistic game that dominated the charts, becoming one of the most downloaded games of year-end 2011. With such a small team, they were able to create something that was so personal to them and to others. Even in the campaign of Castle Crashers, one of the levels is like alien hominid themed, and it's just so fun. Even though it might not be like an extremely personal thing, to me it's so nice that they included something that was just based around their first game that they created together. And that little add-on is just so cool to me. Even though that level gave me like terrible panic attacks every time I played it, it was absolutely terrifying. It's really nice. What I find very important about Castle Crashers that I briefly mentioned before is the value of replayability. I believe that value is very high with the game. Even after beating it, the experience never gets boring, and there's so many different things to do, different levels, different difficulties. There's always something, and I feel like even big name games can struggle with figuring out replayability and how to make it not boring after you beat it, whereas Castle Crashers, the experience is just as great as the first time you played it, and you don't just have this void after you've beaten it. A good video about replayability is a video about Scooch. It talks about the history of replayability, and he goes over everything a lot better than I can, because if you haven't realized, I am complete dog shit at explaining things, so I do recommend you watch that if you want a better understanding of what I'm trying to get at and why I believe the replayability of that game is so important. Castle Crashers is just a very important game and an amazing example to show how impactful indie games can really be to people, the companies, and the industry. And now I'm going to give another example because video games. I don't know, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, don't look at me like that. Don't look at me like that. Don't look at me. Fran Bow, a game created by a Swedish company called Kill Monday Games and released in 2015, is a game that I don't really see being released in mainstream media a lot, or mainstream video games. The art style and aesthetic is just so different to me, and it really catches my attention and eye, and I feel like that's really something that an indie game can come out with and is very capable of, and I feel like Kill Monday Games is a great example to explain that. Although not a very complex game, it again is just a very simple 2D game, but it shows how important simplistic games like that can be, because it's more likely indie games don't be like this big 3D thing, because it's a lot harder, and with a small amount of people it can take a long time and it can be a lot more difficult, where 2D is a lot simpler. But these games are just really well made. Fran Bow is what really got me into these strange twists and these different messages and takes with more of a horror art style, story, aesthetic, everything. And it has all of that, but put into such a simplistic game. Everything about that game was so captivating to me and very strangely comforting. Like, in a very weird way. Like, if you know Fran Bow, that's very weird, because it's not a comforting game at all. But it's comforting to me, in some way. And I know with Fran Bow or Kill Monday Games and their art style, it's very different than what I usually see, and I feel like it's very experimental and just creative being put in a video game, and it's not something I see in a lot of mainstream type games. It's kind of, I guess you can say, personal in a way, just because it really does take a smaller company or working artist to create something so different. I'm shit at explaining. I apologize if that didn't make any sense. I'm sorry. I don't know how indie developers do it, but they're able to create something so incredible and memorable and impactful and important and just all these crazy things when it's just a small group of people. But I feel like because it's a small group of people, they have such a closer bond, which can really show in the final product being the video game. I just feel like because of the close bond, they can work very closely together, which can create something so incredible. I am extremely terrible at explaining things, so I got some help. I asked a couple of my friends to write me a paragraph about why indie games are impactful, important, or memorable. I as well asked them to send in an audio clip of themselves reading that paragraph, but due to technical difficulties, I will be having to read Kappa's paragraph. So you're just going to have to imagine I am a 21-year-old Australian male. Won't be hard, we sound like exactly the same, so super easy to just thonk.
Man, where do I begin? Indie games are some of the most important creative mediums in all of gaming. They set the stage for new creative ideas that some AAA developers wouldn't ever think of trying. They push the boundaries of what is acceptable and what is playable. These games range from art pieces to full-on platformers, and sometimes can provoke a lot of thought with their direction. In recent years, I think games like Cuphead, Gris, No Man's Sky, and What Remains of Edith Finch showed the world the full potential of indie developers. Personally, these games have had a greater impact on me than any AAA title I've ever played.
Indie games are important to the gaming industry because of the feeling of growth you can experience along with it. For example, with one of my favorite games, Bendy and the Ink Machine, a bunch of people were interested in it when it was simply a beta game on the Steam store. Because of this interest, however, they developed more of the story and made it better. The fan base grew from that, and they got more money to be able to expand as much as they wanted and add more detail. I played the game on stream, both the beta and the newer version, and the new version of the game was optimized and was insanely different from the original game. They made a lot of the levels longer, enhanced the detail, and even added particles with the light so it feels like you're really there. The closeness between the community has stayed since the very beginning, and even though it's become a bit more of a mainstream game, it's been really cool to experience that closeness in the community, and I'm really proud for the game and how far it has become. Highly recommend.
Indie games, to me at least, are so impactful or important because they seem to fill a portion of the market that looks like it should be technically unprofitable. Often, games are not thought of as art in the same light as film because many times the most popular games of any given period are not trying to be that. When studios grow, their products grow to match, and at some point, projects have to be extremely accessible, replayable, or exploitative to net the company enough money to appease its sometimes multiple publishers. Focusing more on the physical experience of playing a game isn't necessarily bad, nor does it mean developers don't care or don't try to add elements that stay with you beyond turning off the game. But at some point, there's so many people involved that any idea can get diffused into only its broader aspects. Indie games can be made for a fraction of the cost with significantly less interference from outside sources. Sometimes this means making poor choices that aren't vetted by a committee, and that's something indie devs have to constantly self-check. But in many ways, it allows the creator or team explore concepts that are abstract, unappealing, or extremely personal. Quick interruption of the paragraph. I would just like to say that this part basically explains how I wanted to explain Fran Bow, but I'm terrible at words, and these words are a lot better. So that's basically the explanation of Fran Bow I wanted to give. Okay, continue.
There's a rare feeling I get when playing certain indie games where afterwards I can sit back and completely understand exactly what the developer meant, like this ineffable experience that only could have been experienced through this game being made by this specific developer. I also asked for indie games that he'd like to mention, and these were what he said.
Big thank you to Dag, Mockspade, and Kappa Kaiju for helping me out with this. Much better with words than I am. Moral of the story, indie games are very fucking impactful and very important. If it weren't for these incredible indie games, I wouldn't be going to university right now studying video game art. Honestly, I have never wanted to work for a big name company like Valve or I think of Bungie, but is Bungie still a thing? Are they still? Because I know they stopped with Halo, now it's 343 or whatever. But anyway, big name companies. I've never really had an interest in working with a company like that. I've always wanted to create my own games, just on my own, on my free time, almost like as a hobby. I've wanted to create my own indie games, and if anything, create my small little indie game company. That is something I'd love to do because of these indie games and these different indie game companies that can create such important and such memorable and amazing experiences with these small video games made by a couple people. Like, how cool would it be to just be like, oh, this game would be such a cool idea? Fuck it. I'm gonna make it myself. Yeah, I mean, that's my big brain thonk, but if it weren't for indie games, I probably wouldn't be here where I am now. Standing here, talking about indie games. All of these plans I have for my life and for my future and my education and what I want to do, I can really thank a lot of that to indie games and indie developers. So, thank you. No one's gonna watch it. No indie companies are gonna watch this at all. But thank you. Makes me disappointed to feel that indie games can be brushed off so easily because of how amazing they really are and how important they really are to the industry. But because they don't have a big name slapped on it, like a big name company or a big franchise name just on it, they don't get a lot of attention because they're just not known. And that's the only problem with independent games or independent developers. It's no one knows. But there are some games out there that just have such an incredible style, aesthetic, or art, or gameplay, something so eye-catching that just makes something so appealing to you, even if it doesn't have that big name slapped against it. You know? That's about all I have to talk about. If I missed anything or if there's anything you'd like to add, comment them down below because this is a topic I'm really interested in. I love talking about indie games. I love the topic itself. If there's anything I missed or you think would be nice to add on, please let me know. Share it around. Let's talk about it. Let's have a discussion. Let's go. I got acrylic nails and suddenly I'm sorry. Thank you again to Dag, Mockspade, and Kappa Kaiju for helping me out. I really do appreciate it. It really does mean a lot. Thank you so much because, again, a lot better explaining than I can do. But yeah, thank you so much for helping me out. If you don't know them, you probably know Kappa because he's a lot better than I am. But if you don't know Dag or Mockspade, at least, you can subscribe to them below. I mean, if you don't know Cabby either, he's down below too. But subscribe to them. They make amazing content. They're really cool people. Support them. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please leave it a like. If you didn't like this video, please leave it a like. Comment down below suggestions of other videos I should do, whether it be commentary, video essay, what else do I do? Skits, covers, things, whatever. Let me know. I just hit myself in the face. Thank you so much for all the support. Sorry I haven't been uploading as frequently, and I haven't been uploading these kind of videos. Moving and work and school have been very stressful and time consuming, but I'm determined because I'm hoping one day I'm able to do full-time YouTube, because that would be pretty awesome and I would love that. So yeah, thank you for all the support. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you for watching, and subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, and press the bell for notifications. You know, all that stuff. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you. And like always, adios muchachos.
Hi, because I'm a professional YouTuber, I completely forgot to thank my patrons, so I'm going to be doing that on my phone. Like, I haven't done this before at all, ever. But anyway, thank you to my patrons, $5 and up, Conifer ConnieTreeCow, Anneliese Hope, and my mother. Thank you so much. This for me is a lot. Thank you. Okay.